Bako's heart was shattered and his soul tainted as he stood at the altar of the ancient ritual, his only daughter Lami lying motionless before him. He could hear nothing but the echo of his breath and the pounding of his heart, as if the world itself had grown still. The rich smell of incense filled the air, mingling with the cold chill of the night. The old man stood over him, muttering his final chants, marking the end of Bako's decision, the irrevocable decision that sealed his fate. As he looked down at Lami's lifeless body, her innocent face now frozen in an eternal expression of trust, Bako could no longer remember the man he once was. In the depths of his soul, a terrible emptiness stretched wide and vast. This was the price for all that he had ever wanted. Wealth, power, and comfort, he had gained it all. But it came at the cost of the one thing that had always made him human, his family. Bako staggered back from the ritual, his breath coming in sharp, jagged bursts. His hands, now stained with his daughter's blood, trembled uncontrollably. In his mind, he could hear her voice, a whisper of innocence calling out to him, asking why. Why had he done this to her? Why had he betrayed the love that had once guided him? But there was no time for reflection. The old man who had orchestrated the entire tragedy stood before him, his eyes cold and emotionless. "The gods are pleased," he said with an indifferent smile. "You have done your part, Bako. Your wealth will grow beyond measure, and everything you have dreamed of will be yours." Bako could not bring himself to speak, nor could he bring himself to feel the joy that the old man promised. Instead, his heart was heavy with guilt, and his soul felt like it was being consumed by an unquenchable fire. His wealth, his new house, the fine clothes, none of it could erase the horror of what he had just done. As the days passed, Bako could not escape the weight of his actions. His once beautiful home, now filled with gold and riches, felt like a prison. The walls seemed to close in on him, suffocating him with the unbearable silence. His wife Nia, who had once been his rock, had withdrawn into herself, her eyes no longer filled with the warmth and love they once shared. Instead, they were filled with sorrow and betrayal. She barely spoke to him anymore, the distance between them growing with each passing day. Bako's guilt consumed him, and he found it impossible to focus on the farm that had once been his livelihood. The crops that had been his pride slowly withered, as he no longer had the strength or will to tend to them. His workers complained that the land was growing barren, and his farm, once prosperous, began to fall into disarray. But Bako was beyond caring. The money, the wealth he had so desperately sought had lost all its luster. It had brought him nothing but pain, and no amount of gold could fill the void left by his daughter's sacrifice. Nia's grief finally reached its breaking point. One evening, after weeks of silence and sorrow, she packed her things and left. "I cannot live with you anymore," she said, her voice a mixture of heartbreak and anger. "You have sold our daughter Bako. You have sacrificed her for riches, and there is nothing left for me here." The words struck Bako like a physical blow. He stood in the doorway, his mind spinning, unable to grasp the enormity of what had just happened. Nia, the woman who had stood by his side through every hardship, was gone. And she was right, he had sold their daughter. But Bako could not let go of the wealth. It was the only thing that remained, the only thing that had not abandoned him. So, he clung to it, even as everything else crumbled. The weeks that followed were a blur of drunken nights and sleepless mornings. Bako's soul was empty, yet the money kept flowing in. Every day he received more than he had ever dreamed of: gold coins, rich fabrics, beautiful jewels. But none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except the unbearable grief that gnawed at him from within. In his isolation, Bako thought he had heard the last of the old man, that the ritual had ended with the sacrifice of his daughter. But one day, as Bako was sitting in the lavish sitting room of his mansion, contemplating his misery, a messenger arrived. "Chief Janga requests your presence," the messenger said, bowing low before Bako. Chief Janga. Bako had almost forgotten the man who had lured him into this spiral of darkness. But the mention of his name brought back all the memories of that fateful night when the wealth had first been promised. Bako had made the sacrifice, but he had never truly known the cost. Now it seemed that the price was not yet fully paid. With a reluctant sigh, Bako agreed to meet the chief. At the chief's opulent estate, Bako was led through grand halls adorned with golden tapestries and statues. The air was thick with the scent of incense and wealth, and there, seated on a throne-like chair, was Chief Janga, smiling, as if he had been expecting Bako. "You have done well, Bako," the chief said, his voice smooth and convincing. "Your sacrifice has brought you much, but the gods demand more. The price for such wealth is steep, and you must fulfill the bargain completely." Bako's stomach twisted in fear. "What more could they want?" he whispered, his voice breaking. The chief's smile never wavered. "It is not what they want, Bako. It is what I want. You see, I have been the one who paid for your wealth. All the gold, all the riches, they came from me. The gods are but an illusion, a tool to make men like you think they hold power. In truth, I am the one you served. And now I want my payment." Bako's eyes widened in disbelief. "What do you mean? I sacrificed my daughter for this, my daughter." Chief Janga leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Your daughter was a small price for the wealth you have gained. You didn't sacrifice her for nothing, Bako. But the true price is yet to be paid. I have given you everything. Now, you owe me." Bako stumbled back, his mind reeling. You used me. All of this was for your gain, not the gods, not for the gods' favor. You wanted me to sacrifice my daughter so that I could build wealth for you." The chief's eyes gleamed with dark satisfaction. "Exactly. And now, Bako, I come to collect what is mine." At that moment, a figure stepped forward from the shadows, a servant who had worked for the chief for many years. The servant, an older man with gray hair and a weary expression, stepped forward, his appearance thick with sorrow. As the servant stepped forward, Bako's heart skipped a beat. The man's face seemed oddly familiar, but it wasn't until he looked closer that he realized the truth. The servant was the old man from the forest. His mind raced as the horrifying realization sank in. The old man, who had led him into the ritual, had been standing before him all along, silent and hidden in plain sight. Bako's breath caught in his throat as the true depth of the deception unfolded before him. The truth hit Bako like a blow to the chest. He had been nothing more than a puppet in the chief's game. The wealth, the riches, the life he had built, it had all been for nothing. He had given up his daughter for a lie. With that revelation, everything began to unravel for Bako. The riches he had worked so hard for now seemed like chains, dragging him down into the depths of despair. His mansion felt more like a tomb than a home. The once glittering future he had hoped for was now nothing more than an empty shell, a cruel reminder of his choices. Nia was gone, his daughter was gone, and all that was left was an insatiable hunger for power that he had never truly wanted. The farm that had once sustained him was now abandoned, overgrown with weeds and neglect. Bako had returned to the very place he had come from, a man without purpose, without family, without love. His life had come full circle, but in the most bitter of ways. He had started with nothing and lost everything in his pursuit of wealth. In the end, Bako had learned the most painful lesson of all: wealth gained through darkness would never bring light to the soul. The price of ambition was more than he could bear. And so Bako's story came to an end, his life a tragic reminder of the true cost of wealth. The end.